Okay, good afternoon, everyone. This is the Budget and Tax Committee public hearing, Tuesday, March 30th. We are going to begin with the 532. It's a House bill. We're doing House bills today, and it's Allegheny County delegation, but we've got a star-studded group of members from the committee who would like to present. We've got Delegate Buckle, Lutke, Barnes, Kaiser, you name it. Take it away.
Dream team.
Take it away, Delegate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. House Bill 532 is in its inception an Allegheny County delegation bill. And as filed originally, it was designed solely to address the VLT proceeds issues related to the Rocky Gap Casino in Allegheny County. Some of you may be aware, I think you may have heard a version of the bill or the original version of the bill from Senator Edwards, who's obviously on the committee and with us today. Rocky Gap's favorable rate, I think it was a reasonably favorable rate. It was designed to entice a bidder to come in on the project and take over the state facility at Rocky Gap that was failing more than a decade ago, and to encourage them to place a lottery gaming facility in Western Maryland. As a result, they got a particular rate that had a 10-year sunset, and the 10-year sunset is rapidly approaching.
Who's that?
If we didn't do the bill, the 10-year sunset approached, their VLT slots percentage rate would dip significantly and would perhaps jeopardize future investment in the property and its success. It's one of the largest employers and one of the largest revenue generators in Allegheny County, which I'm sure you all know, unfortunately, is still one of the poorest counties in the state. We're trying hard to get out of that, but Rocky Gap is very important to us. The bill, as drafted as it applies to Rocky Gap that's before you today, they currently receive 60% or 60 points. That's what the operator keeps of VLT through a combination of their base formula and the points that they get for owning and operating their own machines, taking them over from the state. Rocky Gap and Ocean Downs were the last two casinos to be able to afford to do that a few years ago. What the bill would do is roll it back when the sunset expires. Instead of it dropping all the way back to the somewhat punitive rate that it would have been originally, it takes the 60% VLT percentage points for Rocky Gap and reduces it to 58. So there's still a little bit of a loss from the current percentage for the operator, but in conjunction with other provisions of the bill and in recognition of the realities of the industry, I believe that the operator, Allegheny County, and all of the stakeholders that benefit from Rocky Gap think this is a wonderful compromise that will enable them to continue to succeed and contribute to the Education Trust Fund, local impact grants. The bill does allow the local impact grant percentage for our county, which is in dire need, will go back to the standard. It was set at a lower amount, 3.75% is where it's at now. So as to accommodate the better rate for the operator, this will return it to 5.5% where all of the other casinos are. And that is much appreciated. I'll just also briefly speak about two other elements for the more rural or smaller casinos that have been rolled into this bill so that it is one package in front of you instead of a bunch of standalone bills that make it more complicated and just take up more time. This is one comprehensive package that affects these casinos. Many of you know and remember that the Cecil County Casino, the Hollywood Casino at Perryville, has the lowest effective VLT rate to the operator in the state by a pretty significant margin. Their current effective rate is 39%. That is significantly lower than their peers, including Rocky Gap and Ocean Downs, and it is significantly lower than the large players, MGM, Horseshoe, and Maryland Live. The committee felt and believed, and the House felt and believed that it was a good time and a good vehicle to address that disparity in some small part. And the bill would raise the points or the percentage for the operator from VLTs at Hollywood in Cecil County from 39% to 42%. And then finally, for my presentation, the only effect the bill really has on the Ocean Downs Casino in Worcester County near Ocean City is there was a prohibition placed in the law many years ago. We're all familiar with gambling law. There's all these little nooks and crannies of things that people did long since past. There was a prohibition that was put in that did not allow for the development of lodging facilities at the Worcester County VLT facility. So that Ocean Downs would have to be standalone and could not have a hotel or other amenities. Those things have now become commonplace. We have them at MGM, we have them at Maryland Live, We have hotels going in very near Hollywood Perryville. Rocky Gap is obviously a resort in and of itself. You can stay at a hotel in the casino. And so the committee felt that this was the best time to address that anomaly and remove that restriction. So if the Worcester County VLT operator or someone else in conjunction with them wanted to develop lodging facilities at or near within that bubble of the facility, they'd be allowed to do so. And it's my understanding that Worcester County and Ocean City officials are supportive of that and recognize that that's good for their future economic development. Those are the three main elements of the bill that I was sort of here to speak about. I'd certainly turn it over to Delegate Lukey, Chair Kaiser, Delegate Barnes, whoever feels comfortable to discuss with the committee the other provisions that relate to some of the other casinos and the overall slots hold percentage and other things in the bill.
Thank you, Delia. Senator Alford, do you want to hold on till?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Take it away. Whoever's next.
Well, I can go next, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. Thank you. It's always wonderful to see you. So to pick up where Delegate Buckle left off, it's been about a decade since we legalized our 6th casino site and since we had real discussions about the VLT tax rates. And there are a number of issues that have cropped up over the prior decade. So the committee saw an opportunity in this bill to use it as a vehicle for adjusting a number of different issues related to the VLTs. Delegate Buckle has already laid out the arguments related to Rocky Gap and Perryville. I would add to what he said that those casinos face unique competitive pressures from casinos in West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Delaware that need to be accounted for. And he laid out as well the issues at the Worcester County Casino, where the local county government has already essentially taken away their prohibition on a hotel there. So we're conforming with local wishes there. However, in the central Maryland casinos, there's another issue related to competition. We've seen that the Baltimore City site, the Horseshoe Casino, has had some challenges. So the committee in the bill essentially sought to equalize the tax rates for the Baltimore City Casino and the Anne Arundel County Casino. And that's done by dropping essentially the operator share of the proceeds at the Anne Arundel Casino to 47% and increasing the share at the Baltimore City Casino at 47%. So they would have the exact same tax rate and exact same operator share. MGM's operator share is not affected by this bill. It remains 44%. And would not be changed under this bill. The other thing the bill does is it adjusts something that's called the slot hold. So under Maryland law, the VLT machines have to pay back a certain percentage of the money that's put into them. In Maryland, the individual machine slot hold limit is 87%, and the overall average floor slot hold limit is 90%. The bill adjusts those slot hold limits to be more in line with our competitor states in the casino industry. This essentially gives all 6 casinos in Maryland the ability, if they so choose, to adjust their slot hold. It would bring more revenues in, and because it brings more gross gaming revenues in, it would bring more to both the state and those casinos. But the individual casinos will, of course, be making their own business decisions regarding the whether to adjust the slot holds in their machines. And essentially, we believe that some casinos would make the decision that would bring in additional revenue, more than offset what's in the bill, which is already largely offset by the increase in rates at the Anne Arundel site. And so, the committee felt this was perhaps a fairer approach to the VLT tax rates, and I'll conclude my remarks and turn it over if the chair has comments.
And thank you. I wasn't prepared to speak, but I'll say 2 main points on this. First, the overall calculations for the Education Trust Fund is anywhere at the lowest a wash to potentially 25 million more through the combined provisions of this bill. And then to address the question, I can imagine that the senator from Anne Arundel might ask, that while it's true that lives numbers are being brought down by 2 points, but I would also say that that's a correction based on the fact that the large casinos were being given 6 points to own their own slot machines, and while Live was being given 8 points. And that was based on whatever the reasons were 10, 12 years ago, but they should be in line with the others. And I know that the other concern is that the impact now during a pandemic but these new rates wouldn't kick in until January of 2023. So I think the argument of hitting a business at a rough time, it shouldn't be a rough time by then. So I just wanted to add those 2 points, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for letting me speak as well.
Okay, was Delia Barnes here? Is he wanting to engage on this? Guess not. Senator Alford, did you have a question still or no?
No, the chairwoman answered it for me. Thank you. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I believe what Delegate Barnes was going to speak to is the bill also makes adjustments to the local impact aid allowance for Prince George's County to try to make Prince George's County whole. They've been at a disadvantage in the local impact aid calculations since essentially the MGM casino was authorized, and this would attempt to fix that.
Delegate Lukey, what the hold goes from what to what again?
87 to 85.
Yes.
And how many, I mean, sort of practically speaking, don't they use that sort of as a marketing tool? And most of them are up much higher than that anyway, in the 90s.
So, yes, the casinos, when they make decisions about what to do with their slot hold, are looking at their competitors and they're trying to attract gamblers. And so, you know, I don't believe that casinos would en masse all drop all of their slot machines to 85%. But when you go on the floor of the casino, there's actually usually a variety of slot holds on different machines. And day to day or week to week, the casino may adjust the slot holds on different machines depending on various factors. And this would give them the flexibility to drop the slot hold on a machine as low as 85%.
Gotcha. Other questions for the panel before we take a few individuals who want to testify on this bill? Okay, thank you all. First up is PJ Hogan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is PJ Hogan on behalf of Rocky Gap Casino. I want to thank Chairman Kaiser and the whole Ways and Means Committee and Delegate Buckle for passing this bill and sending it over to you. I'm going to keep my comments strictly to the provisions that impact Rocky Gap Casino. That part of the bill, your committee has passed 3 times in the past. We are in support of the bill in its entirety. Rocky Gap has been a success for the state, for Western Maryland, for Allegheny County, and for the operator. As was mentioned, we are in a unique location with the most competition challenges between being sandwiched between Pennsylvania and West Virginia. We are the smallest of the 6 casinos, yet we generate over $21 million per year for the state. We are a major employer in Western Maryland, providing over 500 jobs at peak season. A key point to remember, over half of our customers come from outside of Maryland. And no other Maryland casino faces the level of competition that we do. This bill will reduce the operator share from the current base rate, as Delegate Buckle mentioned, at 50% to 48% in 2023. It also will require that the operator spend 2.5% on capital improvements. We want to upgrade the hotel and the facility. This has been an experiment that has been a success. Golden Entertainment has taken over what was really a debt-laden property from the state, has invested significant funds in this property. Rocky Gap is a true economic stimulus to the region. A recent report from the Maryland Lottery and Gaming Commission recognized the challenges faced by Rocky Gap. Quote, Rocky Gap could see customer erosion to Pennsylvania and West Virginia since both states now offer sports betting at their casinos. Rocky Gap could also see an impact from the rollout of mini casinos in Pennsylvania. We would encourage the legislature to consider these competitive changes unanticipated in the 2012 legislation in looking at tax rates for the smaller casinos, unquote. This bill does exactly that. It addresses those concerns, and I respectfully ask that you please pass House Bill 532 now and provide the stability for Rocky Gap to continue generating revenues for the state. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Next up is Rob Gargiola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Rob Gargiola with Compass on behalf of Maryland Live. Respectfully here opposing the legislation, or at least some of the changes that were made to it. I have had an opportunity to speak with Senator Edwards, and I reached out to Delegate Buckle as well regarding this Allegheny County bill, and obviously had no issues with the bill as introduced, but there were some changes made to it that specifically affect Maryland Live. Specifically, it would increase the tax on Maryland Live Casino by 2 points. And right before the pandemic began, obviously no one could have predicted it nor its economic consequences, but Maryland Live made a $250 million investment in its facilities with a hotel and event center. And a lot of that was financed by debt. And it was, financed under the kind of economic modeling that we've been living with. And this change is a pretty substantial change that would affect them, even though as drafted in the legislation, it's just under 2 years out, it would have a substantial impact. Over the last year, we've seen a 27% drop in revenues because of the pandemic with closures, et cetera. We're still seeing a double-digit reduction in revenue. And I think the timing of this, without really kind of a full hearing or discussion on it, is unwarranted at this time. And the other thing that I would mention is that Maryland Live, since its inception, has paid more taxes to the state than any other casino. And if we were looking at having a discussion about tax rates, I think we would need to examine the entire taxes that are paid by the respective casinos, because if you look at what's called the blended tax rate, which includes table games and the slot machines, Maryland Live, when you look at before the pandemic, 2019, kind of a normal year, we actually paid 2 points more in taxes than our neighboring casino in Baltimore City, and paid nearly 2 points more in taxes compared to MGM, the other large casinos. So we're certainly paying our fair share. And if there's a discussion about equalization, we're happy to have that discussion, but it should really look at kind of the broad picture and not just at VLT solely. Obviously, there's a history that went into determining some of the decisions that were made years ago. But I think if we're gonna proceed on this, there needs to be a larger discussion. So with that, respectfully, because of those provisions, we're opposing the legislation, but obviously, as I've expressed in private conversations to Senator Edwards and have reached out to Delegate Buckle, the bill is introduced, we obviously had no issues with. And I guess in closing, I want to thank the Anne Arundel County delegation for supporting this position as well.
Okay. Questions from the committee? All right. Thank you all very much. We're going to move on to House Bill 852. Chair Kaiser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all. I am here today for my tax sale legislation bill that I'd love to explain to everyone. And this is an issue that I've been dealing with for several years now. And what we're trying to do is create a special program to help the most low-income homeowners who find themselves in tax sale. The concern that I have in terms of the problem is that for some very low-income individuals, the process ends up being fairly predatory with the excessive fees and the interest payments, particularly in some jurisdictions. And while certainly tax sales were created as a process to help deal with tax non-payment, over time, it feels like the tax sale process has not been as designed to really help the low-income homeowners who end up losing their homes. They lose any equity they've built up over their lifetime, and that certainly destabilizes communities. What this program does, and working in great partnership with SSTAT, SSTAT will buy the tax sale liens or tax sale certificates for low-income homeowners of a certain age that have a house worth less than $300,000, income of less than $60,000 a year. And with SDAT as the middleman, not only do they work with the homeowners to help them pay off their debts, they can give them payment plans, they can help them get their homeowners tax credit, they can help them get other benefits along the way. And that's what the Ombudsman has done in this last year, really helping people find out their other benefits. So again, while I think the process was created to make a low-cost method for collecting property taxes, I hope everyone sees it as a good reason to vote for this bill. Again, the system takes a serious vulnerable residents, tax exploitative. Do something about it. We're building this off of a successful Rhode Island program to stand with our neighborhoods, stand with our seniors, keep our neighborhoods intact, and also stand with our county and municipal governments who support this bill. So I thank you all for your consideration on House Bill 852, and I urge your favorable report.
Very good. Senator Zucker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I will try to take it easy on Madam Chair since she knows where I live and she's a teammate of mine. But I was just wondering, Madam Chair, in terms of you're removing low-income homeowners, does it financially negatively impact the tax sale industry? And second is, since we're on the Budget Committee, I was looking at the funding component of the bill, and it seems like a great idea. Why stop after 3 years?
Thank you, Senator. I'll address the first question first about the harm of the tax sale industry. I do not believe this bill does anything to harm them or put them out of business. It's very tailored to low-income homeowners. And again, just a small percentage of tax sales. 2/3 of the properties that are sold at tax sale aren't even owner-occupied. And so many of the owner-occupied houses are middle income, middle wealth, high income, high wealth people. So we're talking about a very limited number of people. So I don't believe that will happen. Investors will have so many other properties still to invest in. To look at the funding, we originally had some tax components in here that the tax sale attorneys were very upset with at the beginning that have been taken out of the bill. But instead we put in this authorized funding of just $750,000, but just for 3 years. And why is that? We think it's that kind of money is enough to get the program running. Money will be coming back in. This isn't about giving homeowners a clean slate. They still have to pay their bills, but they might be able to pay them on a payment plan, something that that would often not be the case if they were dealing with a tax sale investor. And they're also being helped in getting their homeowners tax credit and other benefits. So we think that people will be paying off their liens. Money will be coming into the state that way. Money will be coming in with a small amount of interest that's being charged. So there's some thought that this program will almost be able to pay for itself once it's started. And I think after 3 years, we'll be able to see that, and we'll be able to say, oh, you know what, this is a successful program, but actually it only needs about $200,000 a year because money keeps coming back in. The Rhode Island program completely pays for itself, but they do charge high interest, and we're not charging very high interest. So I do think there will always need to be some state support, but not that much. Thank you, Senator.
Okay, any other questions? Okay. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
See you in a few minutes.
Yes, see you all soon.
Okay. Delegate Lutke, so you're still hanging around, so let's do 1209.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Again, wonderful to see you. You know, HB 1209 relates to an issue that I know your committee, like my committee, has spent a significant amount of time on, although it has to do with a relatively small amount of revenue. And the issue at question is how to tax the peer-to-peer car sharing industry, and in particular, how to do it relative to our rental car taxes in the state of Maryland. Our current rental car rate is 11.5%. Our current peer-to-peer tax rate is 8%, which would default back to 6% if no legislation went into effect this year. And as you know, a number of ancillary issues have come into the conversations about this. One of them is how these two industries are treated at the airport. Another one is the issue of the vehicle excise tax exemption, which the rental car industry receives, although I would point out that the state makes out of that. The average, vehicle excise tax that the state gets on a vehicle in the state is around $1,000 if you include used car sales. And the average lifetime of a privately owned vehicle is about 5.5 years. In that time, a rental car provides the state with upwards of $7,000 in rental car taxes. So ultimately, what our committee decided to do on these various tax issues was play a little bit of King Solomon and try to come up with a reasonable compromise. And we modeled our compromise off of what Virginia has done, where they tax differently depending on how many vehicles an individual is renting out. So under the bill, any person who had more than 10 vehicles that they're renting out through peer-to-peer car sharing websites would have to charge an 11.5% rental car tax or peer-to-peer car tax. Anybody with 10 or fewer vehicles would charge the current 8% tax. And this is intended to differentiate between people who are essentially creating new rental car companies and using the peer-to-peer sites as a platform versus people who are genuinely, they have one or two cars and they're just renting out their vehicle one day a week to make some extra cash. That's essentially what the bill does. And I appreciate, Mr. Chairman, conversations with your committee over the interim, and in particular with Senator McCray, who I got to spend a lot of time on the phone with over the summer as we were batting around ideas for how to deal with this. So thank you very much.
Questions for Delegate Lukey? Senator Elfreth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate Lukey, thank you so much. This is another bill that's of great interest to the Anne Arundel County delegation. And we have a letter coming over to the House this week in support of a separate bill on a similar issue. Our concern here is that how do we ensure that these companies are paying into the infrastructure of BWI? There's the garage that is being paid off by bonds that are supported by the current rental car companies. How do we ensure that as innovation comes into the market, those innovators are also paying into the infrastructure of our state, and particularly of BWI?
Yeah, it's a very good question, given the significant importance of BWI to our entire state's economy, not just Anne Arundel County's. In the House, those issues are more in the Appropriations and Economic Matters Committee, so I haven't been as deeply involved. But my belief all along in my approach to this issue has been, at least from the tax policy perspective, the fundamental idea that you treat like industries in like ways, right? And I do see these as like industries. Now, not everybody does, and that's what resulted in this compromise that we brought over into the Senate. But certainly, I think those issues at the airport are significant. And I believe it's Senator Bidle's bill that's over in the House now has to be part of the conversation as well.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator McCray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And first, I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank Delegate Lukey, Majority Leader, on his leadership on this. I know how contentious it was. Looked like it was only two groups that were submitted testimony unfavorable. One of them seems like you already resolved that issue, because the issue was talking about staggering increases, and there is no staggering increase in the amended bill. So they may just want to take a look at the third reader bill that passed the House. But there was an issue in reference to the amount of cars. I just wanted to say, if you wanted the opportunity to comment on that for the one group that did have a challenge with the fleet being named as 10, because I know that we actually agreed over the summer that it probably should have been 5. So just wanted to give you the opportunity to comment.
Yeah, absolutely. Ultimately, frankly, with the number you pick to differentiate, you're picking a number, right? I mean, there's no hard and fast rule about what constitutes essentially running a rental car business. I would personally be fine at other levels. I think the what you see with the 10-car threshold was the result of a compromise within the House.
Senator Young?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. That same issue. I worry about 10 because I get 10 cars and my wife gets 10 cars. And outside of the major areas, having 20 cars, you're competing with the companies that are paying real estate taxes and have active businesses there. And, I think we've loosened up on a lot of things that are causing problems. The B&Bs have hurt hotels. These taxi companies have almost been put out of business. And I think when you're letting somebody have that many cars, you're on the verge of putting a lot of small businesses around the state out of business and not being able to compete with it. So the 10 kind of concerns me too, because, I know just like with liquor licenses, there are people that have one, their wife has one, their son has one, and they start to create situations we didn't mean. So I also am concerned about BWI. I don't want to do anything to hurt BWI, but those two issues I think still maybe need a little work.
Well, we will leave it in the capable hands of the elite of the Senate Budget and Taxation Committee to resolve those.
Okay, thanks.
Senator Solling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Majority Leader and Delegate Lukey, for bringing this bill. I can say the same thing my good Senator McCray said about going through some of the things that we were going through with this bill in our committee. But I think one of the concerns that was risen with us was the part of the people in-state employees, the brick and mortar, compared to those out of state that are not part of the state and the tax difference. I'm sorry, I don't know the part of the amendments. If maybe you could re-educate me, help me out a little bit to get more of an understanding of maybe did we help that out or assist that in any way? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, so as you mentioned, the rental car industry owns physical sites in the state, right? And so they pay property taxes. They employ people in the state who pay income taxes in addition to the rental car taxes, right? So they certainly have a bigger economic footprint. Now, somebody who's renting their car out through Toro or a similar site also pays taxes if they reach the I'm forgetting what the threshold is now, the 99 threshold. That would then be reported as income and they would pay taxes on it, but it's not as significant. I think, the challenge we have as a legislature is figuring out how to level the playing field. Certainly if a company is innovating, if an industry is innovating, I don't believe we should stand in the way of innovation, but at the same time, we can't give that industry an undue competitive advantage through what is essentially a loophole in our tax structure, which is what this issue is all about. So I hear your concerns. I feel them too. As I said, this bill was an attempt at compromise coming out of the House. We are, of course, waiting with bated breath to see how the B&T Committee deals with it if they want to make any changes, and we're happy to continue discussing.
Thank you, because I totally agree with you about a level playing field. More than anything, we need to do that with our people in state, just to make sure we're all on the same page and making sure we're being fair to them. So thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, any other questions on this bill? Okay, I'm going to follow the leader, literally, Leader Lukey, back to his committee right now. So I can do my bill. I'm going to ask Senator Peters to pick up on House Bill 495, and I will see you all back shortly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate Carr.
Thank you. Good afternoon. For the record, I'm Delegate Julie Polakovich-Carr, here to present House Bill 495. Now, this is a bill that was heavily amended in the House and in its current form addresses future issues of how our state conforms with federal changes to tax law. So under current state law, Maryland in general does conform and adapt to changes made by Congress to federal tax law. However, our state law does give us a provision to have a temporary and automatic decoupling from federal changes in instances when there is an immediate and significant impact to our state's projected revenues. And that law has been in place for about 20 years. However, our state law currently did not anticipate that Congress might ever make retroactive changes to tax law. And in fairness, that's because it was really actually unprecedented until this past year. But in 2020, Congress did pass several retroactive tax changes. Both DLS and the Bureau of Revenue Estimates pointed out that although that might have been a situation where the intent of the current law was to temporarily and automatically decouple from those kinds of changes. In fact, that is not what the letter of the law says. And both of those entities suggested that this provision of state law should be clarified. So the bill in its current form simply does that. It is clarifying that and basically maintaining our status quo that in instances when there is a federal change made to tax law, that Maryland can automatically and temporarily decouple from those provisions to give the legislature a chance to review those changes and to weigh in. I do want to point out, I did see very briefly the opposition testimony that came into your committee here today. Now, I'll just say respectfully, I think there's still some confusion in terms of what's in the bill at this point versus what was amended out by the House. The bill in its current form only applies to future instances and future federal tax changes, nothing that's been enacted to date. And because of that, the bill was fairly uncontroversial in the House and passed nearly unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next, we'll hear Delegate Clark, House Bill 530. And Delegate, we'll hear both your bills, all right, back to back, since you've got two of them.
Well, thank you, Senator. Thank you very much, senators and members of the committee. My name is Gerald Clark, delegate from 29C, Calvert, St. Mary's County. I have before you today House Bill 530, which is a St. Mary's County local bill that would just give the Board of County Commissioners the ability to change the administration of bingo licenses, of which there's about 12 a year, to charitable organizations, from the sheriff to a designated person in county government. That's pretty much the gist of it. You know, we have fire departments and religious organizations, fraternal orders, civic, war veterans, and other charitable organizations that utilize these licenses. And the sheriff has found it to be a little bit cumbersome for him to hand them out and also enforce them. So they just want to make a quick change on that.
Okay, thank you very much. Are any questions from my colleagues? Seeing none, let's skip down to your bill, House Bill 862.
Okay, thank you very much again, Delegate Clark, presenting you House Bill 862. What House Bill 862 is a debt limitation policy for St. Mary's County, another local bill. And basically it just adjusts the percentage of indebtedness that St. Mary's County can incur as a percentage of its gross assessment value in the county of real property. And it also addresses the percentage of that amount that is available to Metcom, which is a quasi-government agency in St. Mary County that oversees the water and sewer plants and the development of water and sewer throughout the county. Pretty simple bill. It's just a change in the percentages of what's already in regulations.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Pleasure seeing you.
Okay, Senator Zucker, HB 571.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Senator Zucker here on behalf of the Montgomery County Senate delegation in support of House Bill 571. This just gives Montgomery County the ability to abate overdue taxes for those disabled active duty service members, disabled veterans, or their surviving spouses. I did want to commend Senator Waldstreicher for his leadership on this. This was his legislation that was a Montgomery County delegation bill, passed out of delegation unanimously. The committee should have a support letter, and I'd ask for a favorable report.
Any questions at all for Senator Zucker? Okay, thank you, Senator. All right, House Bill 864, Delegate Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Chairman, Vice Chair Rosa Pep, and honorable members of Budget and Tax Committee. I'm Delegate Nick Charles, and I thank you for taking the time to consider House Bill 864, the income tax subtraction modification military retirement income. This was not a cross-file bill, so this is the first time you'll be hearing this piece of legislation. This bill serves as a catalyst to add just a little bump of help to our most vulnerable veterans, those who gave their entire adult life fighting for our freedoms, putting their lives on the line for every single Marylander, retiring from the military, coming back to our great state, the most battered soldier, airman, seaman, and Marine with a 100% service disabled rating from the United States Department of Veteran Affairs. Under current law, the first $15,000 of Maryland retirement income for a veteran who is at least 55 years old can be written off of their taxes. When this bill was first introduced into the House, I wanted to double that tax savings for the small group of veterans, allowing for no taxes on the first $30,000. However, after working with our subcommittee chair, we negotiated and settled on a very small increase, lowering the original $15,000 that I wanted down to a $5,000 increase. This bill passed the House unanimously and would only allow for an additional $5,000 tax savings for this very, very small group of individuals. And it's those veterans who are retired and also have irreparable harm for their service and is a verified 100% service disabled from the VA. Mr. Chair, this small group of people, like I said, a very small group, according to the Federal Bureau of Labor and Statistics, there are only approximately 700 veterans in the state of Maryland who classify as 100% service connected through the VA. Seeing that this bill affects both veterans who are 100% service disabled and retired, it is predicted that less than 700 veterans will receive increased subtraction modification because not every one of those veterans are retired. With that being said, the fiscal note on this bill has an insignificant impact on the state's budget. Even if all 700 veterans in the state receive the tax break, the loss of income in the state will be less than $1 million, listing at roughly $630K. Knowing that every veteran who is listed to be 100% connected is not also retired, that number drops drastically and would have a fiscal impact lower than $500,000. Mr. Chair, Budget and Tax Committee, I would like to thank you all for taking this time to hear this piece of legislation that is set to help some of our most vulnerable veterans. And I encourage a favorable report on this to be adopted, HB 864, as the small step for Maryland can take to repay the immense sacrifice of our veterans. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Charles. Veterans, thank you for the bill. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much. All right, next we will hear from Delegate Barron. You've got two bills, HB 981, HB 1010.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and colleagues. For the record, I am Delegate Eric Barron. I am appearing to you on behalf of the Prince George's County House delegation to present House Bill 1010. The bill exempts real property from county property tax if certain conditions are met. The governing body of the county may enter into a payment in lieu of taxes agreement with an owner of real property who is engaged in constructing or operating certain housing structures or projects. the county that is subject to the pilot agreement must be used for a housing structure or project that is constructed or rehabilitated under certain federal, state, or local government programs or acquired under the county's right of first refusal program. The owner of the real property subject to the pilot agreement must agree to certain requirements for the use of the property as low-income housing. This bill was introduced on behalf of County Executive Angela Alsobrooks. We have a representative from the County Executive's office in the person of Angie Rogers. Should the committee have questions on the bill, but that's the summary. It's a local bill. We appreciate your support.
Thank you, Delegate Barron. Angie, did you want to say anything, or are you just here for questions?
Sure. I will just add that we consider the pilot to be a really important tool in the production and preservation of affordable housing in the county. We are particularly looking at this amendment for the pilot specifically because of the number of transactions that we're starting to see around our transit stations in the county. Transit-oriented development is obviously something that the county has focused on intently and focused on growth around our transit stations. But as we focus on that growth, as we focus on the growth of commercial space, mixed use space around those transit stations, we realize that we also need to improve our tools that focus on affordable housing, because that will allow us to preserve some of the existing communities in those transit-oriented development areas as well, to avoid some of the displacement of low and moderate income households that we've seen in other parts of our region where we've seen these dramatic periods of growth. So we are excited for this potential change in the pilot that would help us continue that work.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Delegate Barron? Okay, Delegate Barron, you have one other bill, HB 981, tax sales limited auction. Is that your bill, or?
It is not. I can give it a go.
Yeah.
Hey, Delegate Barron, I can jump in and do the testimony. I'm Dwayne London. I'm Delegate Barnes' Chief of Staff.
Oh, okay.
There we are.
All right. Very good. Thank you, Delegate Barron. Go ahead and jump in.
All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, again, I'm Dwayne London, Chief of Staff for Delegate Daryl Barnes. I'm here on behalf of the Prince George's County delegation in support of House Bill 981. House Bill 981 is a local bill that seeks to clarify and remedy the intent of a similar piece of legislation that passed in 2017 by the General Assembly. The original intention of this legislation in 2017 was designed to bolster home ownership opportunities for the residents and those employed by Prince George's County. Unfortunately, as we know, with well-intentioned legislation, sometimes it can have some unintended consequences. And this bill closes the loophole that allowed out-of-state investors to come in and dominate the limited auction tax sales on these properties. There were two amendments, one altering the effective date, which allowed it would allow, if passed, to go into effect July 1st, 2021, and then just some additional clarifying language. The bill did pass unanimously out of the Prince George's County delegation, and there was no opposition to the bill. That concludes my testimony. And for all these reasons, we asked for a favorable report on House Bill 981. Thank you.
Okay, any questions on this bill? Thank you very much. Great job. Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to the chair to HB 1173.
Say 1173. I'm locked up.
Delegate Fisher,
I
on
don't know if
mute.
folks are hearing me.
Did you say
Hello?
Mr. Chairman, HB
System is locked up.
1173, Calvert County. I think. Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, did you call 1173?
I did. I was going to turn it over to our chair, but I think we're having some technical difficulties. So why don't you go ahead, and when he pops on, we'll turn it over to him. Yeah, we're having some problems here, Lori. Oops.
System.
My connection was bad. Can folks hear me now? Did we get through 1173? Okay. So Delegate Fisher, is he still here? He's not?
He's probably logging back on.
Okay. Well, then let's move on to Delegate Brooks, 1178.
Thanks, Chair Gazone, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on behalf of HB 1178, and that's the income tax subtraction modification for her first-time homebuyer savings account. Yeah. The purpose of this bill is to allow qualifying individuals as first-time home buyers to save money for a down payment through a tax savings account. Yeah. An eligible account holder may claim a subtraction modification for the amount of the contributions up to $5,000 during the taxable year to a designated account, and two, their earnings, including the interest and other income on the principal from this designated account during the year. Yeah. The subtraction modification may be claimed up to 10 years and for a maximum contribution of $50,000 during the 10-year period. The bill also contributes the $50,000 for the 10 years. The bill also allows individuals to create an account for beneficiaries like a child or a grandchild. You know, additionally, as unanimously passed by the House, this bill requires the financial institutions to provide homebuyer education and home counseling, and requires the Department of Housing and Community Development to conduct outreach to communicate to communities who have experienced lower rates of home ownership. Yeah. Down payment and closing costs are the biggest impediments to many first-time home purchases who makes enough money to afford a monthly mortgage, but the payment oftentimes are hindered because they have student debts and other costs. Yeah. So this bill, additionally, homeowners will help home equity and help them, will be a key strategy in help building that wealth gap between homeowners of color, you know. So as the ABLE Foundation reported, they observed that the home ownership in Black communities has fallen over the years. You know, like for instance, in Baltimore City, it dropped from 51% down to 47%, and this was pre-pandemic. Yeah, so for many renters, the financial stumbling block of first-time home buyers is twofold: qualifying for the mortgage and then coming up with that down payment, 5, 10, or even 20%. Yeah. Of the property value. That with this tax-free savings account, it will help in a tremendous way. You know, I call this a trifecta. You know, with this whole My Credit. Whereas can you write off interest on borrowed money? You know, you write off property taxes. You get to use it, and it also appreciates in value. The person who takes advantage of this subtraction modification will have up to 15 years to use those funds that were set aside. And if they're not, that whatever remaining amount would be considered an ordinary income. So with that in mind, I request a favorable report. Thanks.
Thank you, Delia. Questions? Thank you very much.
Thanks.
We've got Delia Fisher back. So, Delia Fisher.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for this system locking up. I'm not sure what happened. It does happen, unfortunately. For the record, Delegate Mark Fisher, Calvert County, on behalf of House Bill 1170, issue up to $20 million in general obligation bonds for the acquisition, construction, improvement, or renovation of public buildings, facilities, and public works projects. The date of the maturity of the bonds cannot exceed 30 years. And that is the bill. You have a letter in your file from the House delegate supporting bill.
Very good. Questions? Thank you, Delegate. Now 1182, Delegate Kipke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everybody. This bill is relates to a tax sale, which I know we all like to avoid talking about, but it is before you because I have a constituent who has a waterfront property and they want to build an in-law suite over a garage for their elderly parent. Unfortunately, to do that, they have to bulldoze a very old garage, which is detached. But between their house and the garage, there's a 15-foot path that's owned by another party. The other party is behind on their taxes by over 8 years. And unfortunately, the property is of such little value because it's so small, it will take a very long time for it to reach tax sale. So Stan Ward and Ways and Means helped me develop a very narrowly crafted bill that will remedy this constituent's problem, and it sunsets the bill in a very short time to ensure that there's no unintended consequences. There is one amendment in your packet or in your on your floor system. I originally wrote the bill for a 6-foot path through the property, and just because I didn't know, and it turned out it was a 15-foot path through the property. So that would need to be adopted in order to remedy the problem for the constituent. And then I think that'll do it. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. I know it's a very unusual bill, but it's of great importance to my constituents. I'd appreciate your favorable consideration.
Thank you. Sounds like a sticky situation. Happy to try to help if we can. Any questions? Okay. Thank you very much. 1219. Delegate Conaway. You're on mute still, Delegate.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me now?
Can, yes.
All right. I'm Delegate Conaway here to introduce House Bill 1219. And what this does, this is a Baltimore City only bill, and it involves a tax sale notice. And what it says basically is that if the city wants to include your property in a tax sale, they have to send it out to you by certified mail so that the mail can be tracked. We're having a problem with timely receiving of mail, and this way a person will be able to track the mail and see when they received it. It would be in the United States postal system, so everyone would know where it was and how it came from the city to the dwelling. The expense increase would be $108,000, which that expense will be turned back into the property tax. In other words, your first class letter fee will be added on to your property tax sale price. So the revenues overall would not be affected. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions if I could.
Do we have a delegation letter on this?
Yes, I do have a Baltimore City delegation. Well, it passed through the Baltimore City delegation, yes.
Okay, very good. Any other questions? All right, House Bill 1222.
Good afternoon again. It's Delegate Conaway for House Bill 1222. And 1222 deals with the tax sale notices. And what this says is that the tax sale notices will have to detail every element that is on your tax sale. For example, it will say that your water bill is included, or repairs to your concrete out front, or your alley tax or alley repairs will be included. So everything will be itemized, and we're having a problem with the way that things should be and the way that things are. And right now, I think it's $750 is the threshold for property tax to be triggered. But what then they're supposed to not add water bills in, but what we're finding out is that the water bills that are being added in, people don't know what the different fees are. So we want to make a mandate to say, you have to tell them what the fees are. You have to give them a breakdown. And it did go through the Baltimore City delegation and passed favorable. And with that,
Senator McCray has a question.
Yes.
Not a question, just a comment, Mr. Chair. Point of clarification. So it went through the House delegation. So
I'm sorry. Yes, sir. It went through the.
It's important to recognize that there is a difference. It's two chambers. We'll be taking this up, Mr. Chair, this coming Friday, and hopefully it'll come out supportive. So thank you for the opportunity.
Very good.
Thank you, Senator.
Other questions? All right, thank you very much, Delegate. 1255, Delegate Ivey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Senators. It's truly an honor. For the record, Delegate Julian Ivey here presenting House Bill 1255. As amended, the bill seeks to make improvements to and build public awareness about the homestead and homeowners property tax credits. As amended, House Bill 1255 requires a notification of the homestead tax credit be included in the base contract for the sale of residential property. Second, the bill requires the application for the homestead tax credit be presented to a home buyer at the settlement for the property. The bill also requires SDAT to contract with the usability consultant to review all the public informational materials and forms produced by the department concerning the homestead and homeowners property tax credits by August 1st, 2021. Lastly, House Bill 1255 requires SDAT and the comptroller to work with the Ways and Means Committee on an interim study about simplifying the way income is calculated for the homeowners tax credit and making the homeowners tax credit automatically renewable. The bill was heavily amended to reduce the fiscal note from $55 million all the way down to $18,000. Originally, the legislation altered how income is calculated when considering the homeowner property tax credit, and also moved the age in which individuals are able to apply for the homeowner property tax credit retroactively for 3 years, from 70 to 60 years of age. And personally, I'd like to thank the chair of my committee, Chair Kaiser, and my subcommittee chair, Delegate Delia Barnes, for their leadership in the House on the issue of combating tax sales and for seeking out common sense solutions to protect intergenerational wealth in low and middle income communities. This is but one piece of that overarching effort. The bill passed out of the committee and out of the House unanimously. With that, I ask for a favorable report on House Bill 1255.
Okay. Questions for the delegate? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
House Bill 1341. This is a departmental University of Maryland Academic Facilities Bonding Authority. I think, is there Mr. Page from USM?
Yes, thank you. Bob Page, representing the University System of Maryland. I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor for Financial Affairs, and I thank you for hearing me out in support of House Bill 1341. By statute, we're required to seek General Assembly approval for any state-supported project that we seek to issue revenue bonds to fund. And so House Bill 1341 is critical to our capital improvement program annually. And we've been seeking and getting the approval of the General Assembly for the past 3 decades on similar bills. This particular year, we're asking the General Assembly to approve an aggregate of $30 million of revenue bonds $25 million of which will be used for facility renewal projects. The university system has a large backlog of what's called deferred maintenance that we like to eat into each year. Largely, it's dependent on having the funding, and the revenue bond allocation annually is an important source of funding for our institutions to satisfy deferred maintenance and facility upkeep on state-supported facilities. And then the remaining $5 million is for an infrastructure project at the University of Maryland College Park. These are all critical projects, and we ask the committee's favorable report on HB 1341. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Page. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much. And finally today, HB 1374, this is a prior auth bill. Delegate Barnes and I talked earlier today, and he will not be coming today. This prior auth bill is what it is always, every year. So, Senator Peters, everything good? Any questions, anyone? Okay, very good. Thank you all. We will not be voting tomorrow. I hope you all got that message. And stay tuned. It's going to be an exciting day tomorrow. Lots going on. I suspect we will probably see a supplemental of some consequence. And we'll, I guess, finish up. Well, I don't know if we'll finish capital on the floor tomorrow, but we got lots going on regardless. I think there's a good chance that, yeah, the conference committees will probably meet in the afternoon. So if I were to guess, I'd probably say between 3 and 5, sometime in there. Okay.